Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com coming to you from sunny Budapest where it's currently pouring with rain. And this is a tutorial on complex data types using the Java Collections framework. I've got some sample data here and I want to store this data temporarily in memory using Java Collections. And the example that I'm about to show you is inspired by something I saw in a university syllabus. Complex data structures are an important part of any programming language, and it's an important thing to know, and you also find them on university exams and coursework and stuff like that. I'm only going to show you a simple example here, and in fact in general, if you know what data you're going to represent in advance, very often it's better to define some classes to hold that data. Like if you've got a list of people with a name and an ID and some other information, you would want to define a person class and then use an array list, for example, of those people. But sometimes you don't know in advance what kind of data you're going to represent in memory. For example, you're reading an XML file and you don't know what nodes that XML is going to have in there, or you're reading from a database or something like that. And for some reason you can't define any useful classes, and you want to hold that data in memory, and that's when you would perhaps use a complex data type. And for the example that I'm about to show you, this is a bit of a contrived example, and here I'm not sure if I would define any classes. Maybe this is a good example actually of where you would just use some kind of complex data structure. Well, anyway, let's get on to the example. So I just wanted to mention that if you can define classes to simplify this, you should do it rather than resorting to a complex data structure as your first weapon of choice. So here I've got a list of emergency vehicles, and I'm normally this would be reading this from a file or a database or something, or a JSON server, I don't know. But to keep things simple here, I'm just using a 1D and a 2D array list to hold the data. Here's the list of emergency vehicles, and here are lists of drivers that are qualified to operate that vehicle. So these drivers can operate an ambulance, these drivers can operate a helicopter, and these ones can run a lifeboat. And these are in order. So the idea is that if we have an emergency that requires, for example, a lifeboat, we'll go to the appropriate list of drivers or operators and would choose Pete first, but if he's not available, we'll go to Mary, and if she's not available, we'll try Bob. So this is an ordered list. And how can we represent this in the memory of the computer? I'm going to rush through this pretty quickly because most of the concepts that you'll see here I've described in previous videos. I just wanted to put one simple example here of a more complicated kind of nested data structure. So ideally, you'd want to use a list to hold stuff. It's very quick and efficient to look things up by an index and a list. But here we want to look things up using a string. So we're going to use a map instead. And do we want to use a sorted map? Well, no, because it doesn't matter what order the map keys are in. We just want to throw a key at that map, like helicopter, and get back the appropriate list of drivers. We don't care about the order of the keys. So I won't use any kind of sorted map. I'm just going to use a map. So I'm going to say map here, and we'll define a variable of the interface type, which is often considered good practice, because we'll instantiate specific kinds of maps and sets or whatever. But often, once you've instantiated them with new, you like to forget about them and just work with common interface methods. So I'm going to say map, and the key is going to be string, and the value, well, again, this could be a list, but the disadvantage of a list is it doesn't weed out duplicates, and we don't want duplicates in this list. If we add Sue a second time, we don't want her appearing a second time in a list because it's useless. So instead we'll use a set like this, and the key in the set is going to be sets only have keys, and it's going to be a string. So and let's define a variable here. Let's call it personnel, like that, and add the appropriate inputs with Control-Shift-O or Command-Shift-O on the map. So you see that I'm nesting one kind of interface definition here, interface usage within another, like this. So I've got finishing with 2 diamond brackets here because these are nested within this. And now we need to instantiate a particular type of map to hold this data. And since it's not sorted, we can use the most efficient, simplest type, which is just hash map, and put the diamond brackets in again, and then round brackets there, which you always need with when you're doing new, which I've forgotten. So let's put new in there. There we go. And import hash map. And if you're using Java 7, you can just have diamond brackets here, and you don't have to repeat all this. If you're using Java 6 or lower, then you will have to repeat all this. It doesn't do any harm, so I'll put it in here anyway, because a lot of people are still using Java 6, I think. But if you're on Java 7, you just need a diamond brackets there, and Java will figure out the type because you've already specified it here. Now the next step is to iterate through the vehicles, and for each vehicle we need to then get the appropriate list of drivers or operators. And so to correlate these two arrays here, we're going to need to use an index. So I'm going to iterate through this array using an index, and I'll use that index to then get the appropriate list of drivers here. So let's say for int I equals 0, I less than, and we want to iterate from 0 to less than the length of this list. So let's say vehicles dot length. Remember, with a simple array list, the length is stored in the length property. With a set like a collection type, usually use the size method to get the length of it, but it's just a simple property for an array, so there's no round brackets there. And let's say here I plus plus, and then we can put in the curly parentheses like that, and whoops, and now I can get the vehicle here. I can say string vehicle equals vehicles and square brackets I, and I can get the kind of subarray from this 2D array here. So I can say string array. I can't call this drivers because I've already used the name drivers. So let's call this drivers list equals drivers, and again supply the index. Now we can create our set to hold the drivers, and let's say set string, and we're actually, because we've created the map with new, we haven't actually created any sets. We've only said that there is going to be a set with this interface here. Let's say set string driver set equals new, and we have to decide what kind of set to use, and we know it's going to be a sorted set, so that means either tree set or linked hash set. And tree set would sort these in alphabetical order, and we don't want that. We want them to remain in the order that we add them in. So let's say linked hash set, and that will remove duplicates for us if there should be any added from our data source. There aren't any duplicates here, but if there were, this would sort them out. And now we want to iterate through our list of drivers and add them to the set. Actually, I think we could do this in one step. I think that we could probably supply them here. Let's just try this. Does that work? Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, anyway, for the sake of debugging and making sure we've got this working properly, it's better probably to iterate through the list of drivers. So let's say here for, and we can actually use a for each loop here. I can say string, well, I can't use driver again, or can I? Have I used driver somewhere? No, I haven't. So I can say string driver in driver list and just iterate through it. So we've seen this before if you followed my Java for Beginners course, and this is called a for each loop, even though it's drivers list. Even though we just use the for keyword still, it's called for each because we're saying for each driver in the driver list here. And we can add those to the set by saying driver set dot add driver. And when we've done that, we can then add the driver list to the map. So I can say personnel, that's this map up here, dot put, and the key is vehicle, and the value is driver. No, it's not. The value is driver set. There we go. Now, I'd strongly recommend that you put a sysout in this loop. So you do a system out on the vehicle, and as you go through this inner loop, do a sysout on the driver as well, because that will help you have confidence that you are actually putting into your collection the stuff that you expect to add to your collection. But I won't do that here just to save time, but I'd strongly recommend putting sysout so you can see all the data that you're adding. What I'll do here is I'll just now try to retrieve a particular driver. So let's say we've got an emergency. Let's say this emergency requires a helicopter. We can now say, let's say string driver, I could say driver 1, let's say. Well, what we'd want to do is iterate over all the drivers for a particular vehicle, and then we would look at that list and choose the top guy, and if he's not available, choose the second guy, and if she's not available, and so on. So let's get a list from the map. Let's say I can use driver list. I could even use drivers list here because this is scoped to these brackets. So let's say drivers list. I'll call it drivers list again to be consistent. Equals. It's not going to be a string actually. It's going to be a set of strings. So set of string drivers list equals and personnel dot get, and the key, let's say the key's helicopter, like that. And now I can say for string drivers list, and whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I don't even know how I did it. Let's put in alt. Yeah, there we go. I need to type crazy keys on this Hungarian Mac to get the right brackets. And then let's say here sysout. Let's say sysout driver, like that, and then we can just see that. So what we expect to see now is the list of drivers for the helicopter, and that's this list here. Let's run it and see if we get it. Run, and there we go, Sue, Richard, Bob, Fred, which is Sue, Richard, Bob, Fred. It's also extremely important to do some sanity checks, and ideally you'd create systematic tests, even JUnit tests for this kind of thing, but at the minimum run some output, maybe create a test method where you get some stuff out of your collection and check that what you've got in it makes sense. And of course you could also iterate over this map and print stuff out. In fact, let's do that just to finish off. Let's iterate through the whole thing. So if we want to iterate through the whole thing, let's put a comment here, example usage. And I've gone through iterating through maps before, but admittedly I haven't iterated through a complex data type. So iterate through whole thing would look like this. So it's say for, and we can say actually let's let's maybe just get the keys from the map. So I can say for string vehicle in, and personnel dot keys key set, and let's I think that will work. So we're iterating through this set of keys, and each key is a string. So in the for each loop we say string vehicle, and again this is stuff that I've gone through before. And then for each one we could get the set of, let's just copy that, the set of drivers, and probably I've got an error because I've already defined that. What I could do is I could just, to avoid duplicates, to avoid having a duplicate variable here, I could just enclose this in brackets, which is not a technique that I often use, but if I put some brackets in there, then this will be scoped to these outer brackets. Let's just do Control Shift F to format. Brackets just to scope drivers list variable. So I'm just putting those brackets in so that this only exists between these brackets here, and then I can use it again later. So can use again later, like that. And this drivers list here is scoped to these brackets, and normally the brackets occur because you've got a keyword or a method or something, but you can just use them by themselves like that if you want to reduce the scope of a variable. So now we can say here we want to get from the personnel the vehicle, the list of drivers for the vehicle, and then go through them and print them out. And what I'll do is I'll just say here sysout and vehicle. Let's have another, and yeah, and maybe here I could, let's have a systemout.print. So I print the vehicle on the line, and then on the same line now I can print a colon, and like that, systemout.print again, and then I print the list of drivers with systemout.print, and let's also have a space like that. And then finally, let's have a sysout that just an empty sysout to just produce a new line at the end. And if I run that now, I've still got a print line in there. Let's get rid of that. Let's run that. And what I can produce is this formatted list like that, which looks good. Let's just check. Oh yeah, this has got formatted now, which makes it a bit harder to read actually, because I did Control Shift F. But there we go, Pete, Mary, Bob, and ambulance. Ambulance is Fred, Sue, Pete. Helicopter is Sue, Richard, Bob, Fred. Helicopter, Sue, Richard, Bob, Fred. So that's all good, and they're all in order, notice. It's just that their vehicles are in a different order because I stored them in an unsorted map. So that's quite enough for this tutorial. It's a long business, but I wanted to give you an example of the sort of stuff that I've seen on university syllabuses and stuff that's useful to know. And as I say, the basic concept of building up data structures with lists, sets and maps is common to a wide range of programming languages. So even if you want to learn other languages, this will still apply in some form. I'll put this code on caveofprogramming.com so you can look at it and you can use it freely. And in fact, if you go to www.caveofprogramming.com, then a lot of people ask me where to find the source code, for example, for Java for Beginners or my multi-threading course. A lot of people are looking at this on YouTube or on Udemy, and for my free courses at the moment, to get the source code, you need to go to my website here, and I put a comment here now that you have to go to the YouTube video pages down here, and these are all free tutorials. And for example, this tutorial that I'm recording now, that's going to be under Java Collections Framework here, and you'll have a part 13, and if you click on any one of these videos here, you can see the source code. Usually I've embedded it in a page like this, so you can copy and paste if you want. And for some of them, actually, like the design patterns course, I provided a link to a zip file because, well, yeah, for those videos anyway that have associated source code. And you can also, let's just take a look at an example here. So yeah, there's a link to the source code here and zipped up because there's several files involved. And you can also follow my courses on Udemy. If you click these icons at the top, you can see some of them are free, and the ones that you have to pay for, they all have free videos. So if you want to learn Java Swing, for example, then if you click on this and well, let's go to an incognito window, you can look at the first videos completely for free. So here, all you have to do is click on them and they'll start hopefully playing. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and I think this finishes the stuff that I'm going to do on collections, unless you want to make a request of some kind. But I'm going to continue with my Java for Beginners course, certainly, and there's more stuff there. And my Java Design Patterns course, there's also more stuff to come in that. And there'll be more courses from me shortly, possibly on Java Spring. So until next time, happy coding.